The bright flash of light signaled the arrival of the alien vessel in Earth's atmosphere. It was unlike anything humans had ever seen before, sleek, seamless, and silent as it descended toward the United Nations headquarters in New York. The year was 2042, and humanity was about to experience first contact. Captain John Mercer stood tall, his military uniform pressed perfectly as he waited on the landing pad. Beside him, diplomat Lisa Winters fidgeted with her collar, trying to hide her nervousness. They had been chosen to represent Earth in this historic moment, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on their shoulders. "Remember," John whispered, "we show strength and openness in equal measure." Lisa nodded. 7 billion people are counting on us not to mess this up. The alien vessel settled gently on the ground, and a portion of its hull seemed to melt away, forming an elegant doorway. The beings that emerged were tall and slender with iridescent skin that shifted colors in the sunlight. Their large, almond-shaped eyes blinked slowly as they surveyed the human delegation. "I am Ambassador Zorlath of the Salfori Empire, representing the Galactic Council," the lead alien announced in perfect English. "We come in peace and friendship to welcome Earth into the galactic community." The next few days passed in a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and ceremonies. The Salfori explained that the Galactic Council comprised 12 advanced species who governed this sector of the galaxy. They showed holographic displays of magnificent worlds, incredible technology, and the benefits of joining their alliance. "Earth has progressed remarkably for such a young civilization," Ambassador Zorlath said during a private meeting with Earth's leaders. "However, the Council believes you would benefit from a period as a protected species rather than immediate full membership." President Harris frowned. "Protected? What exactly does that entail?" "Simply that we would guide your development, provide appropriate technology transfers, and ensure your safety as you mature further," the ambassador explained smoothly. "It is a great honor. Many species wait centuries for such an opportunity." Later that night, John and Lisa were invited aboard the Salfori ship for a cultural exchange. As they toured the vessel, John noticed how certain areas remained off-limits. The aliens were friendly but evasive when asked specific questions about their weapons or governance structure. What no one realized was that the Salfori had planted microscopic surveillance devices throughout the human delegation's quarters. After the humans left, several council species gathered to discuss their findings. "These humans are more primitive than we expected," said Krelvax, a reptilian representative. "Their military capabilities are laughable compared to ours." "But their planet is rich," replied Zorlath. "The water resources alone would sustain our colonies for centuries, and their biological diversity is remarkable." "Will they accept protectorate status?" asked another alien. "They have little choice," Zorlath said with a gesture that might have been a smile. "We offer technology they cannot resist while hiding our true capabilities. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late." Unfortunately for the Council, they underestimated human vigilance. One of the human translators, Maria Gonzalez, overheard fragments of conversation through a ventilation system. Although her grasp of the alien language was incomplete, what she heard disturbed her deeply. "Captain Mercer," she reported the next morning, "I think they're hiding something. They mentioned our resources and something about harvesting when they thought no one was listening." John frowned. "Are you certain?" "Not completely," Maria admitted. "My translation might be off." "We'll keep our guard up," John decided. "But we can't make accusations without proof. The potential benefits of this alliance are too great to jeopardize with paranoia." As the Earth delegation prepared to return home with news of the historic contact, both hope and unease filled their hearts. Humanity stood on the threshold of a new era, but whether it would lead to advancement or disaster remained to be seen. Earth joined the Galactic Council as a protectorate 6 months after first contact. The arrangement seemed beneficial at first. The Salfori provided limited technology, medical devices that cured several diseases, efficient energy systems, and faster transportation methods. In return, Earth agreed to limitations on military development and allowed council representatives access to certain regions for cultural exchange. Few noticed how these exchanges always centered around mineral-rich areas, fresh water sources, and locations with unique biological specimens. Olivia Martinez, a scientist working at the New Earth Council research facility in Brazil, was among the first to grow suspicious. She compared the technology Earth received with what she glimpsed on council ships. The difference was stark. "They're giving us outdated systems," she told her colleague, Peter Wong, one evening. "It's like giving a smartphone to someone using smoke signals, impressive at first, but nowhere near their actual capabilities." Peter looked nervously at the council monitoring devices in the lab. "Be careful what you say," he whispered. Meanwhile, in the Mojave Desert, military officer Daniel Carter discovered something disturbing. His team monitored a remote area supposedly used for atmospheric testing by the Council. Instead, they recorded weapons being tested against Earth-specific targets. "They're testing effectiveness against our infrastructure," Daniel reported to his superior, General Freeman. "They've created mock-ups of our power plants, water treatment facilities, even military bases." General Freeman sighed heavily. "The president won't want to hear this. The public is thrilled with the medical advances. No one wants to risk losing council support, even if that support comes with hidden costs," Daniel asked. Across the globe, others were connecting similar dots. In London, data analyst Claire Brown discovered patterns in council resource requests. In Tokyo, communications expert Hiro Tanaka intercepted partial transmissions that contradicted official council statements. In Cape Town, marine biologist Noah Campbell found evidence of secret underwater mining operations. These individuals eventually found each other through encrypted channels and formed a secret task force. They called themselves the Cassandras, after the Greek prophet doomed to speak truths no one would believe. Olivia joined them, bringing valuable insider knowledge. "The council has done this before," she explained during their first secure video conference. "I found references in their historical database. They protect planets, extract resources, then either abandon the civilization or, worse, relocate the native species to more suitable environments when they've taken what they want." "We need to warn everyone," Noah insisted. Daniel shook his head. "With what proof? Everything we have is circumstantial. The council controls all major media channels now. They'd paint us as paranoid extremists." Claire's voice was steady. "Then we need better evidence and a contingency plan. If what we suspect is true, Earth needs to prepare for betrayal." The task force worked in secret, gathering information and building a network of trusted allies. They faced constant challenges. Council surveillance was everywhere, and many humans genuinely believed in the benevolence of their galactic protectors. Earth's leaders remained divided. Some heeded the warnings and quietly authorized contingency planning. Others dismissed the concerns, pointing to the benefits already received and fearing the consequences of appearing ungrateful or hostile. For 3 years, this uncomfortable arrangement continued. On the surface, Earth embraced its role as an eager protectorate. New council technologies transformed daily life. Sulfuri representatives became common sights in major cities. Children learned alien languages in school, and cultural exchanges flourished. Beneath this peaceful facade, however, tensions grew. More resources left the planet than promised. More restrictions were placed on human activities. More council military ships arrived in orbit, ostensibly for protection. The Cassandras watched and waited, convinced that the council's true intentions would soon be revealed. They were right, but even they underestimated how quickly and brutally the betrayal would come. The sky darkened over New York as massive council ships moved into low orbit. It was exactly 3 years and 2 months after first contact. Similar scenes played out across the globe. London, Beijing, Cairo, Sydney, all witnessed the sudden appearance of alien vessels far larger than any previously seen on Earth. Global communications networks were the first to go down. Then power grids failed in major cities. Panic spread as humans realized something was terribly wrong. In the United Nations Emergency Chamber, Ambassador Zor Lath addressed the hastily assembled world leaders. His formerly friendly demeanor had vanished, replaced by cold efficiency. The Council has determined that Earth's resources would be better managed under direct control, he announced without preamble. Your planet will be redistributed among worthy Council species. Humans will be relocated to designated habitation zones on terraformed moons in the outer system. President Harris stood up, face pale with anger. This is an act of war. Earth never agreed to surrender sovereignty. Your agreement is not required, Zorlath replied. The protectorate status you accepted grants the Council authority to make decisions regarding optimal resource allocation. Your primitive legal understanding does not change this reality. As the meeting deteriorated, military installations worldwide reported incoming attacks. The Council struck with precision, targeting defense systems, command centers, and communication hubs. At the North American Defense Command, General Freeman watched helplessly as reports flooded in. Missiles launched against the alien ships detonated harmlessly against advanced shields. Fighter jets were swatted from the sky by energy weapons. Ground forces found their equipment suddenly non-functional. They've been studying us for years, he muttered. They know exactly where to hit and how. The death toll mounted quickly. Council ground forces, a mix of Salfori troops and mechanized units, secured strategic locations with ruthless efficiency. They established landing zones in major cities and began constructing processing facilities for human relocation. In Chicago, Nurse Amy Foster treated wounded civilians as explosions rocked the hospital. They're herding people into those ships, a bloody police officer told her as she bandaged his arm. Families separated, no explanation. Anyone who resists gets stunned or worse. Council broadcasts now dominated all remaining communication channels. They showed images of humans peacefully boarding transport ships, voiced over with assurances that relocation was for the benefit and protection of the human species. The reality on the ground was far different. In Seoul, teacher Ben Kim led a group of students through underground passages to escape the aliens patrolling above. In Rio de Janeiro, bus driver Mateo Oliveira watched in horror as Council forces rounded up residents of an entire neighborhood. In Nairobi, Dr. Grace Mwangi treated victims of pacification weapons that left terrible burns. The Council had expected Earth to surrender within days. Their intelligence indicated humans would quickly recognize the futility of resistance against such overwhelming technological superiority. Yet pockets of organized resistance emerged everywhere. Military units that survived the initial strikes adopted guerrilla tactics. Civilian volunteers joined them, armed with whatever weapons they could find. They couldn't win direct confrontations, but they could disrupt, delay, and frustrate the occupation forces. By the end of the first week, Zorlath was furious. The subjugation of Earth was taking much longer than planned. Council casualties, while minimal, were higher than projected. Resource extraction was behind schedule. Increase pacification efforts, he ordered his commanders. Any human resistance must be crushed completely. Make examples of defiant population centers. The order led to the destruction of Detroit, the first major city to be completely leveled as a warning to others. Council ships positioned above the city unleashed weapons that reduced buildings to ash in seconds. The death toll was catastrophic. As news of Detroit spread, human resistance seemed to falter. Council forces reported decreased attacks and more compliance with relocation orders. Zorlath was satisfied. The humans were learning their place at last. He had no idea he was witnessing not surrender, but the calm before a storm of Earth's making. 6 months after first contact, long before the Council's betrayal, a secret meeting took place deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The Cassandras had convinced key military and government officials that their warnings deserved attention. What began that day would ultimately determine Earth's fate. General Alicia Reynolds stood before a room of selected experts from around the world. On screen behind her were satellite images of Council activities that contradicted their stated purposes. "We hope for the best but must prepare for the worst," she said firmly. "If the Council proves hostile, we need options they won't expect." Project Sleeping Giant began that day. While publicly complying with Council restrictions, humanity quietly built its defense in places the aliens couldn't monitor. Abandoned mines, undersea caverns, and remote wilderness areas became secret bases. Old military tunnels were expanded into vast underground facilities. Frank Doyle, a brilliant engineer from Ireland, led the technology development team. They worked with captured Council tech, reverse engineering it and finding weaknesses. "Their systems rely on quantum harmonics," Frank explained during one breakthrough. "Advanced, yes, but also vulnerable if you know how to create disruptive interference patterns." His team developed weapons specifically designed to target Council technology. They created communication systems the aliens couldn't detect or intercept. Most importantly, they built defenses that could withstand Council attacks. Meanwhile, General Reynolds coordinated a shadow military, training soldiers in secret while their official counterparts served as distraction and gathered intelligence. Every piece of Council technology gifted to Earth was studied, replicated, and improved upon. "They think we're simple because we accept their gifts without question," Reynolds told her commanders. "That assumption will be their downfall." The most challenging aspect was moving billions of civilians to safety without alerting Council observers. The solution came from an unlikely source: entertainment technology. Virtual reality systems, supposedly developed for gaming, were actually training programs teaching civilians emergency protocols. Fictional disaster movies contained coded instructions for evacuation routes. Public infrastructure projects concealed the creation of enormous underground shelters. "The Council watches our military and government," explained Sophia Reed, the psychologist who designed the program. "But they dismiss our entertainment as primitive distraction. It's the perfect hiding place for real information." For 3 years, Earth prepared while pretending to submit. When Council ships appeared over major cities that fateful day, it seemed Earth was defenseless. The initial attacks proved devastating. But even as Detroit burned, the real human response was carefully orchestrated. Beneath the Great Lakes, massive doors opened in the lakebed as stealth submarines launched. In the Sahara Desert, sand dunes shifted to reveal hidden hangars. Throughout the Amazon rainforest, camouflaged facilities activated as trees mechanically folded away from disguised launching pads. The public destruction and apparent surrender was a calculated sacrifice, buying time for the final preparations. While the Council focused on major cities, billions of civilians were already safe in underground shelters. Protected by technology the aliens didn't know humans possessed. Phase 1 complete. General Reynolds confirmed from the Central Command Center beneath Colorado. Civilian evacuation at 94% and rising. Military assets in position. Council forces exactly where we want them. Screens around her showed Council troops concentrating on urban centers, rounding up the remaining humans, mostly volunteers who had agreed to create the illusion of compliance while wearing subdermal trackers for later rescue. "They're not finding as many of us as their population data suggests they should," noted Colonel Patul, Reynolds' second-in-command. "They'll realize something's wrong soon." "By then it won't matter," Reynolds replied. She turned to the communications officer. "Send the signal." A simple code, "Sleeping Giant Awakens," transmitted through Earth's hidden quantum network. Around the world, resistance forces received the message. The counterattack was about to begin, and the Council had no idea what was coming. The first sign that something was wrong came when Council ships over the Atlantic suddenly lost communication with their fleet command. Then reports arrived of unexplained equipment failures near the former naval base in Norfolk. Within minutes, similar incidents occurred globally. Council forces experiencing catastrophic system crashes, weapons failing, and communication networks collapsing. From the waters of Sydney Harbor, sleek vessels unlike anything the Council had seen emerged silently. In the mountains of Switzerland, Massive doors opened in seemingly solid rock faces to reveal advanced fighter craft. Beneath the sands of the Sahara, hidden launch facilities activated as Earth revealed its true military might. Impossible, gasped Commander Vexnar aboard the Salfori command ship. Their technology is at least a century beyond what our intelligence reported. Earth's counterattack was synchronized and devastating. Advanced stealth vessels, built using modified Council technology, struck orbital command ships with weapons specifically calibrated to penetrate alien shields. The element of surprise was total. They played us, Zorlath realized too late. All this time, they were studying us while pretending to submit. On the ground, Colonel Sam Bishop led the assault to reclaim Chicago. His soldiers wore armor that rendered Council scanning technology useless. Their weapons fired pulses that disrupted the alien neural networks. Remember, Bishop told his troops, capture when possible. We're not like them. This directive surprised the Council forces, who had expected humans to seek revenge through extermination. Instead, Earth forces took prisoners, treating them according to strict ethical protocols established years earlier. In Washington, D.C., Council ground troops found themselves suddenly surrounded by humans emerging from hidden underground access points. Their weapons locked up, disabled by signals broadcast from disguised transmitters that had been in place since before the invasion began. "Your forces are surrounded," announced the human commander through translation devices. "Surrender and you will be treated humanely according to Galactic law." The Council troops, stunned by this unexpected reversal and the mention of Galactic law, which they had flagrantly violated, laid down their weapons. Within 12 hours, Earth had reclaimed control of most major cities. Council forces retreated to defensive positions, but found their communication with orbital support cut off. The human attack had specifically targeted command and control systems, leaving individual Council units isolated and confused. In orbit, the situation was equally dire for the invaders. Earth's hidden fleet had destroyed or disabled 60% of Council vessels. The remaining ships attempted to regroup, but faced a technology they couldn't counter: adaptive electronic warfare systems that learned and evolved with each engagement. "They'd been planning this since we arrived," realized the Salfori fleet commander. "Everything they showed us was a deception." Back in the Central Command Center, General Reynolds monitored the global situation. Screens showed green indicators spreading across digital maps as Earth forces reclaimed territory. "Phase 2 nearly complete," reported her tactical officer. "Casualty reports show minimal civilian losses. Council prisoners number in the thousands." Reynolds nodded, her expression grave despite their success. "And their command structure?" "We've captured 3 regional commanders, including Ambassador Zorlath. He was attempting to evacuate from the New York landing zone." This news brought a grim smile to Reynolds' face. "Excellent. Begin Phase 3 preparations." Phase 3 was the most audacious part of Earth's plan, taking the fight beyond their planet to the Council itself. As night fell across a planet in the midst of liberation, captured Council ships were already being repurposed. Earth scientists and engineers worked alongside military personnel, preparing for the next stage of the conflict. In a secure facility beneath Vancouver, Zorlath sat in a cell, watched by human guards. He had expected torture or execution. Instead, he received medical treatment for his injuries and formal notification of his rights as a prisoner under Galactic law. Laws his own people had written, but never expected to have enforced against them. "Why didn't you just surrender?" asked his guard, curiosity evident in her voice. Zorlath had no answer. The humans' capacity for deception had been matched only by their restraint and victory, 2 qualities the Council had fatally underestimated. Exactly 1 week after Earth's successful counterattack, the first human strike teams departed for Council space. Using captured vessels modified with Earth's advanced stealth technology, they moved undetected through the Galactic transportation network. Their mission was not wholesale destruction, but strategic disruption and exposure of Council corruption. Commander Kelly Ward led the primary strike team. A former Special Forces operative, she had spent the past 3 years studying Council military tactics and technologies. Her team consisted of 30 specialists, each chosen for their particular skills and psychological resilience. "Remember your training," she told them as they approached the Council's central hub world, Sulfur Prime. "We're not here for revenge. We're here to end a system of exploitation that has victimized countless species before us." The massive space station orbiting Sulfur Prime housed the Council's administrative headquarters. Kelly's team infiltrated it using security codes extracted from captured officers. Moving through service corridors and maintenance shafts, they avoided detection while placing specialized devices at key locations. Meanwhile, Earth forces launched simultaneous operations against Council facilities on 17 different worlds. These weren't military targets, but rather information centers, propaganda broadcast stations, and resource processing facilities built with the spoils of planetary exploitation. On the Council mining colony of Vega II, Lieutenant Paul Garcia's team freed thousands of enslaved workers from a supposedly uninhabited world. The Council had claimed the planet was unpopulated when they began stripping its resources decades earlier. "We've been here for generations," an elder told him through a translator. "The Council came and said we had no legal claim to our ancestral lands. Those who resisted disappeared." Paul's team documented everything, adding it to the growing evidence being compiled against the Council leadership. Back on Sulfur Prime, Kelly's team reached the central communication hub. The next phase was the most dangerous and the most critical. "Begin transmission," she ordered. Their specialized devices activated simultaneously across the station, overriding the normal security protocols. Every information screen throughout Council space suddenly showed the same images. Evidence of Council atrocities committed against dozens of species over centuries. The broadcast included footage from Earth showing the destruction of Detroit, testimonies from other victimized planets, and internal Council documents proving the systematic nature of their exploitation. "People of the galaxy," announced Jack Foster, Earth's newly appointed ambassador, in a recorded message. "What you are seeing is the truth the Council has hidden from you. Earth was not the first world to suffer this fate, but we are determined to be the last." The effect was immediate and profound. On worlds throughout Council space, populations who had only heard sanitized versions of Council protective interventions now saw the brutal reality. Many took to the streets in protest. Others, particularly those from previously subjugated species, began active resistance against local Council authorities. The Council's military attempted to respond, only to discover that Earth had used their week-long advantage to devastating effect. Key fleet communication relays had been compromised. Command encryption had been broken. Weapon systems mysteriously malfunctioned when targeted against Earth vessels. "How are they doing this?" demanded Supreme Counselor Krenvac, watching helplessly as his carefully constructed system of control collapsed around him. The answer was simple but humiliating. Humans had spent 3 years studying Council technology while creating the impression they barely understood it. They had identified and exploited weaknesses the Council didn't even know existed. Most devastating of all, Earth forces showed remarkable restraint. They disabled rather than destroyed Council military vessels. They captured rather than killed Council officials. They targeted infrastructure while minimizing civilian casualties. This approach denied the Council leadership the ability to portray humans as savage invaders. Instead, Earth appeared as righteous liberators, exposing corruption and offering a better way forward. Within 3 days, Council authority had collapsed on 11 major worlds. Within a week, resistance movements had formed on dozens more. The careful facade of benevolent governance that had maintained Council power for centuries lay in ruins, shattered by human determination and the simple power of truth. The Grand Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from all Council species crowded the massive circular hall, along with delegates from previously subjugated worlds. The emergency session had been called after 2 weeks of galactic upheaval that had shattered the old order. Jack Foster walked confidently to the central podium. As Earth's appointed ambassador, he carried the weight of humanity's response to decades of Council deception. Unlike the elaborate robes worn by Council representatives, he dressed simply in a dark blue suit. His only adornment was a small pin showing Earth as seen from space. For centuries, he began, his voice carrying through the perfect acoustics, the Galactic Council has presented itself as a force for stability and progress. Today, we all know the truth. Behind him, massive screens displayed evidence compiled from hundreds of worlds. The systematic exploitation of resources, the displacement of native populations, the suppression of technological development that might challenge Council authority. Earth was not special in being targeted, Foster continued. We were merely the latest in a long line of victims. What makes Earth different is that we saw through your deception and prepared accordingly. The Xalfori Supreme Counselor, Vextral, rose from his seat. You have used military force against legitimate authority. You have violated. We have violated nothing, Foster interrupted calmly. Every action taken by Earth forces has been in accordance with the Council's own laws regarding self-defense and the protection of sovereign rights. Laws you conveniently ignored when invading our world. A murmur ran through the chamber. Many species had never heard anyone interrupt a Supreme Counselor before. Foster gestured to a group of legal experts from various worlds who had been reviewing Earth's evidence. These independent jurists have confirmed our findings. The Council leadership has systematically violated its own founding charter for generations. The evidence was irrefutable. Council archives, secured during Earth's strategic strikes, provided documentation of thousands of violations spanning centuries. Particularly damning were records of deliberate cultural manipulation, resource theft, and in some cases, genocide disguised as relocation programs. Earth does not seek revenge, Foster said, surprising many who had expected demands for punishment. We seek reform. The concept of a galactic council is sound, a forum where diverse species can cooperate for mutual benefit. The corruption of that ideal is what we oppose. He outlined Earth's proposal, a reformed council where all member species had equal standing. Former protectorate planets would receive full membership status. Resource sharing would be negotiated fairly. Military power would be balanced through mutual oversight. Most importantly, Foster emphasized, no species will be permitted to exploit another. The strong will no longer prey upon the developing. This is our non-negotiable condition. The chamber erupted in debate. Species that had benefited from the old system objected loudly. Those who had suffered under it voiced strong support. Through it all, Foster stood calmly at the podium, waiting for order to return. Finally, an elderly representative from the Tellurian species, one of the original council founders before being sidelined by the Xalfori, approached the central floor. I have seen the council's birth and its corruption, she said, her voice wavering with age. What Earth proposes is not revolution but restoration, a return to our founding principles that were abandoned in the pursuit of power and wealth. Her endorsement changed the tenor of the debate. More moderate voices gained strength. The most corrupt council members found themselves increasingly isolated. After 3 days of negotiation, the provisional agreement was reached. The Xalfori and their closest allies would face justice tribunals. A transitional authority would guide reforms. Earth would lead a new defense coalition tasked with preventing exploitation. As Foster left the chamber after the final vote, Commander Kelly Ward fell into step beside him. They're actually accepting our terms, she said, sounding surprised despite having helped plan this outcome. Foster nodded. They didn't have much choice. But the real work begins now, building something better from the ruins of their system. Do you think it will last? Kelly asked. If we remain vigilant, yes, Foster replied. Humanity's greatest weapons weren't our ships or technology. They were our capacity for cooperation and our refusal to become like those who attacked us. That's what truly shocked them.